She told me that her friend wouldn't really die. She'd just go to this other world where magic is real and possibilities are endless. It's like heaven, but you don't actually die, you just cross over into this new body. She wanted to send her friend there as some sort of reward, but also so that she'd have a friend when she goes there herself. Maybe she was even hinting at killing herself, but it's hard to understand where this delusion is going. She said something would take their bodies and keep them alive here so they could come back anytime. It was very elaborate. She described this place called the waiting room and said she even been there. It's like a layover into this world of magic. But she didn't do anything to herself to visit that room? This was all admittedly difficult for Am to follow, so they probed their best and to understand what they were being told. I asked her about that. She said you can only go to the waiting room and look into the other world unless you die here. But then she assured me that you don't actually die and that it was only temporary. Guardians from the other world then inhabit your body and hold on to it until you're ready to come back. He sputtered, wide-eyed. That's very elaborate. Am considered a reason. Where might this all be coming from? Has she been reading a lot of fantasy novels, trolling any specific websites on the internet? I thought about that, and there was something there. He sighed. But she had deleted her search history, and I'm not even sure how to go about getting around that. The bartender returned with a cordial and another beer. There was another uncomfortable moment of silence while Am considered asking how many that was, and Percy waited to be asked. The two stood in their silent standoff, wondering when or if it would break. Am broke first, lightly sipping their cordial as they rolled their eyes. Another moment passed as Percy wordlessly thanked Am for not mentioning it. Am broke the silence and continued the conversation. Doesn't this smack of something that's being coaxed, encouraged, or even requested? I had considered that. I researched behavioral issues springing up from things like internet challenges. Indeed, it would explain why each obsession seemed random, was nearly uncompromising, and changed weekly. I considered that maybe she was being bullied, and that each one of these obsessions was some sort of peer pressure that was being placed on her. That maybe she was worried if she didn't follow through, something would happen to her. There were always hints that there was a consequence if each ritual wasn't followed to the letter. But when I finally got her to open up about it, she told me she honestly had no idea what would happen. It took months to bridge that confidence. At some point, I just relented that she has a well-developed imagination and that she was amalgamating things from pop culture into this elaborate fantasy. And it's not schizotypal, Am asked. Save the appointment where she just hummed through the whole thing, she is always present, lucid, and aware of her surroundings. Sharp as a tack, really. I'd even say hypervigilant in ways that suggest trauma. Percy sipped at his beer. A look of defeat crashed over him. It still could be, Am added. Am, I have turned over every possible stone. I'm not entirely convinced it's not. Again, he sighed, this time far more deeply. But if it is, it's something so atypical I don't even know what to look for, where to even begin looking. Everything about this sounds like she's being coached. Am sat back and sipped their cordial. What do you mean? Percy turned to his sibling, slightly annoyed that they could make that declaration so simply. Specific rituals, non-specific consequences, hiding your search history, acting out in ways that are imaginative and targeted, acting out like a damn internet challenge. Am shot him an equally annoyed look. Sounds to me like your patient is being manipulated, and that in turn is manipulating you. Percy shook his head. Come on, you can't be serious. Has anyone been monitoring this child's internet use? Am chided gently. Especially for a child who knows how and when to delete their search history. It seemed too easy, especially now that months had gone by with so many erratic behavioral issues. Percy instantly brushed off the thought, though said nothing and just made a sarcastic noise. Am continued to stare at him annoyed. You're the one drowning your sorrows in a pit of despair because you feel like you let this one slip through the cracks. And all I'm saying, it's the one thing you haven't fully considered. Anger crept up Percy's back and knotted deeply in his neck and shoulders. Am watched the tension building up in her brother and wondered if the man of pure temperance might actually snap. After a second of this, he sputtered out the longest, deepest sigh yet, giving his sibling a subtle nod. Am I an idiot? He asked. Shut up, you big old baby. They slapped his shoulder. We both know you're not an idiot. Published, quoted, aspired to by your peers. We both know you're the best at what you do. Look, you said it yourself. There was nothing initial about this case that was so concerning. There was a reason to labor on it. The way you described it, she became violently, so sudden and so randomly, it left your head spinning. I'm absolutely certain that the easiest way to be left grasping at straws and maybe even miss something more obvious signs, and hell, I could still be wrong. It's the only thing I haven't been able to fully investigate or completely write off. He sat back and swirled his beer in thought. It had seemed like a trauma response. What if that trauma had come from some kind of source of abuse? What if there's a hidden manipulator in play and we're seeing her respond directly to that manipulation? I've been so focused on the behaviors that she might have even slipped and hit it at it and I just missed it. Am shivered at the thought of some internet perv manipulating a child like that. It might explain why these very specific and fantastic ideas are coming from. I had even considered that she was behaving like an indoctrinated cultist. The more he thought on it, the more it made sense to him. The bizarre fixations on strange religious dogma, it's all weird and perverse, but not too far off the usual Anglo-Christian perversion. If anything, the rituals give me some insight into their possible psyche and motive, if you're right. Where you sleep, how you speak, if you can eat. They're like bizarre ritualistic punishments inflicted on an individual with a deeply religious upbringing. They could be taking out their pattern of abuse on her in their own sadistic way. I'd even considered that someone like my patient would be the kind usually targeted by predators. Her intelligence and the active imagination could have made her a prime candidate for this kind of abuse, and I never saw it. Whoa there, slow your roll, Am interrupted their brother using signs of verbal interrupted their brother's signs of verbal tailspin. Don't go slipping into despair just yet. If any of this makes sense, shouldn't you consult the parents immediately? I'm sorry, there I go again. He felt up and down his person looking for his phone. I'm just going to need to step out real quickly. I'll have her brought in for an emergency appointment tomorrow. Am shook their head as they watched their brother stumble a bit, head full of beer. Finally, Percy composed himself and retrieved his phone, then his wallet, then left his card on the bar top. I just need to step out for a second, put the whole thing on my card for now. He fumbled slightly as he went, then made his way outside for some privacy. In the mirrored backing of the bar, for the briefest of seconds, Am noticed a shadowy figure standing just behind their brother. They turned and looked, but no one was there. Turning back, the shadow was gone. Perhaps just a trick of the light? Someone passing by the bar at just the right time, at just the right angle? A cold shiver ran up their spine. Percy's office was open and bright, filled with ferns, pastel paintings of nature, and ringed with bookshelves. The shelves behind his pastel blue desk were filled with the usual psychological scholarly tomes. But the shelves throughout the office were filled with every child's book imaginable. A few were even stocked with board games as well as small toys and puzzles.